Welcome back, everyone, to Let's Talk Business South Carolina. It's good to have you. I'm Rick Jenkins, your host, and this is episode number 13. My first guest today is Marc Mullis. He is the founder and CEO of Payformance Partners. They are headquartered here in South Carolina, but they are doing business a little bit of everywhere, all over the globe. They help you measure your in-house compensation programs and provide the technology you need to develop a compensation ROI. Now, I've never heard it said quite that way, but I know this guy, Marc Mullis, is going to help me understand it. Marc, welcome.
Thanks so much, Rick. I appreciate you having me.
It is good to have you here. Now, you told me before we came on the air that you drove down from Rock Hill?
Fort Mill.
Fort Mill, that's right. You drove down from Fort Mill, and you said that's a couple-hour drive?
It is a couple-hour drive, lovingly known as Fort Thrill to anyone who lives there. Yeah,
that's right. Well, I appreciate you making the drive. Before we get into business, let's talk about you for a minute. Now, you've been doing this for quite some time, a couple decades, but you have not been doing Payformance, which you founded a while back. You have not been doing that for that amount of time. First of all, when did you found Payformance Partners?
It was actually 10 years ago this past
10 years
April.
ago.
Yeah.
But you've got a couple decades of experience, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Of course, graduating from the College of Charleston, moved back up to Fort Mill, and started doing comp geek work then. We like to call ourselves comp geeks. We get into the nerdy situations and obviously do a lot of number crunching. So, started with a lot of large companies, and obviously in the Charlotte area, you're going to be in banking a bit and some other large companies as well before I started the company, Payformance.
And what made you say, you know what, I'm going to do my own gig?
Well, so I got into being a compensation geek, just crunching numbers. My degree is in psychology. I like the motivational psychology side of things. So I thought, well, all right, I like crunching numbers. I like motivating people. Let's see if we can't design some incentive plans and get people motivated to do some work, really good work for their companies.
Well, compensation consultants. Now, I got to be honest. Until we met and until we had a conversation, I did not understand this, nor did I don't think that it existed. And so once we got to talking, I became very intrigued about it. So let's kind of break this down. You called yourself a comp geek, is that right?
Yeah.
Okay. So compensation consultants, tell me what you do.
Well, it's known in the world as oh my gosh, we're going to spend tens of thousands of dollars to have people come in and tell us what to do, and that's not the case.
Right. Okay.
We are not your typical consultants. In fact, I mentioned earlier I worked for a lot of large companies, and before I started Payformance, and working for those companies, I realized, look, we're a big company. We have compensation people on staff. We can determine labor rates. We can help the company determine how to keep the talent that we have, how to acquire more talent. But what do small companies do that don't have compensation people on staff or can't afford big box firm consulting help? So I started Payformance Partners with the thought in mind that we would help small to medium-sized companies, nonprofits, anyone who really didn't have the resources to understand how they should be paying and why they should be paying their employees market rates in order to keep that talent.
So you help them understand what market rate is.
That's exactly right.
You also mentioned retention, which, of course, we all know that most every company has workforce issues of one kind or another, and there is nothing more important than retaining your talent. It's one thing to find new talent, but it's just as or more important to retain the good talent that you have. And you all work in that area as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, look, as a company, your largest expense in most companies is your labor costs, right? So we don't want you to have to spend more money. We want to optimize your spend. That's our goal. Other comp consultants, or at least the theory of comp consultants, is they're going to make me spend way more money, and that's not always the case. We look for innovative ways to optimize the spend that you currently have to better position yourself to retain that talent.
So let's say a company calls you and you go in to do what you do, and they've got a staff of, let's say, 25 people. And I would assume that you're taking a look at that staff and saying, these folks might be a little under market value and these folks might be a little over market value, and you just kind of go through all of that. Mm-hmm. At some point, you're going to make your recommendations before you leave, right?
Right.
And some of those recommendations are, these 6 people are paid too much money, right? Now, Mr. CEO or Miss CEO, you can do with that what you want. We're just sharing that information with you, right? So I guess my question to you is, do you help those companies make those changes within their organization, or just provide expertise on how maybe it should be done?
Well, we can do both, actually. We do the analysis and determine who's overpaid, who's underpaid. And by the way, overpaid is not always a bad thing. And overpaid to some is different than overpaid to others. Yeah. There are salary ranges that we create, and some people, if they're new and not quite proficient at their job, they may be a little bit under market, and that's okay. And there may be some people that are on the far end of the spectrum and at the max of the salary range, but they've got decades of experience in the job that they're doing, so that's okay that they're a bit over market. So it's all about what over market is and what under market is. But yes, in that particular case, what we would do is say, look, here's 6 people that are well paid compared to market. Next time you come around annual salary review, maybe we should give a little more money to the people that are underpaid compared to their experience.
And what if, I'm just thinking about it in terms of the things that I've experienced over the years and how I might handle the circumstance. And this one is always tricky, but let's say you got 2 or 3 people that are overpaid, but you know what? They're good employees, but maybe they're overpaid quite substantially. What options does a company have? Is there an option to cut that salary? Well, I suppose there's always an option for it, but how often does that happen where you cut a salary?
We very rarely opt to cut someone's salary. We find other innovative options to get their compensation, the ship right.
Redoing job descriptions, maybe?
So there's a couple of ways. There's a few ways in which people are compensated. So salary, everyone knows about salary, right? You get paid every 2 weeks. It hits your bank account every month, whatever it is. That's called fixed pay. There's also variable pay, which is incentive compensation, right? So that's incentives, bonuses, commissions. So there's a mix of that depending on what role you're in. You can imagine in a sales position, obviously, you're going to be heavily incentivized or on a commission. But if you're an accountant, you're probably heavier on the base salary side, but still have a variable comp side. So if there's a high salary, we would probably opt to do something a little more innovative than just cut. We would maybe shift a little more dollars towards the variable pay side, because that helps everyone, right? If you don't achieve your goals, you're not going to get it. So really, you're putting it in the hands of the employee to go get that money. And if they achieve those goals, the company wins and the employee wins.
Right. Yeah.
Better than cutting someone's salary.
Yeah, it's a little easier, I suppose, for someone to digest that their total potential compensation is going to remain the same, even though you're switching buckets a little bit.
Right.
So let's talk about your clients. Give me an idea. Well, first of all, how many clients you got approximately? How many people do you work with on a regular basis?
My goodness. Hundreds.
Hundreds.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We are growing fast. We are a small but mighty team. We typically handle about 3 to 4 projects at a time. Over the past, that's historically. Right now, we're running 10 projects. We're just growing tremendously. So It's fantastic.
Good for you. And do your clients tend to fit in a few different buckets in terms of industry? Do you find you have a sweet spot in terms of industry, or is it all over the place?
Well, it is a little bit of a sweet spot, but I think it's because we love it so much. We love doing manufacturing, construction. Those are 2 that we really like doing. It's the backbone of our country, right?
Yes.
Between construction and manufacturing, it is the backbone of our country. So we love helping those companies understand how to pay and how to optimize their spend and not continue to have problems with their talent. Right. So those are 2 that we definitely enjoy doing. But other than that, we're industry agnostic. We also, from an employee size, you mentioned a company of 25 employees. We definitely have customers like that. We definitely have customers that are 15, 20,000 employees plus that are global. So
manufacturing. We know a thing or two about manufacturing in South Carolina, yes?
Absolutely.
And I can certainly understand that the types of services that you provide would work well within the manufacturing industry. Makes perfect sense. Those guys are always trying to figure out how to streamline their organization to become more profitable, especially when you've got 2 or 3 shifts of people. Sometimes you got hundreds of folks. So that makes sense to me. But tell me about construction. Construction is one of those industries that I kind of consider a bellwether industry of sorts, because when construction is going good and they're booked out with projects down the road a little bit, you know that things are looking pretty good in the economy. And so I'm always interested in, especially commercial and industrial construction. Tell me how your services might help those guys out. I can't quite picture what that might look like.
Well, it's interesting, especially in the commercial side, on the residential side of construction as well. But there's some pretty innovative ways that we've come up with to pay folks in the construction industry. And I say we, compensation geeks as a whole, not just Payformance Partners, but we definitely lean on that and we look to innovate even further on that. So things like project bonuses. So if you're on a high-rise building and you're a superintendent or a PM on those jobs, you're going to be on that job for a while, right? And so we set up a project bonus plan. So at completion or even at milestones, you can get a portion of incentives. So that's driving that timeline even faster, right? You're helping motivate those employees to get that project done.
I can imagine that there are a lot of companies out there that need your services but don't realize that they need your services, or just don't understand that if they had your services that they could streamline and you know, be a little more profitable or make better decisions. How do you find those folks? You know what I'm saying?
Honestly,
word of mouth.
Look, it's been 10 years and we've not done any shotgun blast marketing at all. Yeah. So we do great work and get referred a lot of times. And we get into a construction industry or a manufacturing industry, as we were just talking about. We do some really good work. All the HR people and CFOs, they all know each other in those industries and they pass us along. So it's been really good, doing good work, great customer service, knowing our clients really well, and providing great solutions. Really, it's been word of mouth. And I know that's 10 years of successful business, no marketing.
There is no better way to grow a company than organically if you can make it happen. So congratulations there. Let's steer back to workforce for a second. South Carolina, in particular the upstate area of South Carolina, has performed very well in a lot of the analytics associated with workforce over the last several years, going well before the pandemic hit in March of 2020. Unemployment rate has been minuscule at times. Companies just can't find assistance. What are you finding out there as you go around and you're talking to these people? Are you also having conversations about, it's one thing to retain them, but I can't find them?
Yeah, I think that's one of the things, aside from our great quality work that we do, I think that's one of the things definitely that's helping our company grow is compensation has been the same it's been status quo for many, many years. I know everyone will associate with we have a 3% increase budget, right? A salary increase budget. That's been happening for many, many years. Now we're starting to see that actually creep up to 4.5%, 5%, 6%. And that's fantastic that we're seeing some differentiation in the market now, whereas it was all the same before. So employees now, after the pandemic or even during the pandemic, have a bit of an upper hand right now. And I think that's one of the things that's driving companies to seek us out, is to say, okay, what do I do in this crazy Wild West kind of compensation market to keep my talent or to acquire new talent? Mm-hmm. So I really think that has a lot to do with our success, of course, that plus our quality customer service.
Of course. You can't get by without that, right? Let's talk about manufacturing again real quick. You guys are going to be at the annual South Carolina Manufacturing Conference and Expo coming up here in a few weeks. That industry is important to you. What's going to happen over there?
I hope a lot of fun stuff. It's going to be great. This is our first time going. I can't believe that I'm actually saying that, but it's our first time going, and we are really excited. And looking around, there's a couple of other HR communities that are going to be there exhibiting, but no other compensation consultants. So if anyone at the manufacturing conference is looking for compensation help, stop by. We're happy to help.
Okay, Mark, I'm going to get you out of here on this. Let's talk about, is there any topics that are big right now, any trending topics in the comp geek world that we should all know about?
Yeah, absolutely. There's lots going on. As I said, after the pandemic, it's just all kind of busted wide open here. So obviously we have remote work. That's huge. How do we pay remote workers when we've got people scattered along in all these different small towns all over the country? Well, we have that data. We can get to that. So we can help out with remote work and strategies around that. If you've got a hybrid, so some people are coming into the office, some people aren't, fully remote, fully in the office. How do you pay all these people that are working differently, and some commuting in, paying for gas, paying for trains, paying for all kinds of different things, or staying at home when they're not? How do you pay those people differently? So that's one thing for sure. The other is pay transparency. There are huge laws coming around now that a number of states, I think we're up to almost 10 states now that have passed pay transparency laws, meaning that when you post a job and you're hiring for that role, you have to post a reasonable salary range, right? And so that way the person applying for the job has an idea of what it pays. So they may not apply for it, or they may apply for it simply based on that. So lots of great action happening around pay transparency. And some may say, oh, this is, back in the day, you couldn't talk about salary. You were actually encouraged not to by the company, or you might get in trouble for talking about your salary. Not anymore. It's out on the streets. In fact, there are lots of TikTokers and all kinds of different folks that are out on the streets asking people what they get paid. Right. Hannah Williams is a great one. If you're looking at TikTok, she is just blown up after college.
What's her name?
Hannah Williams.
Hannah Williams.
And so she goes out on the street and asks people what their salaries are, and people are willing to tell her. So this new generation of workers coming into the workforce now, they're fine and happy to answer that question and tell you what they're making. And what that does is it helps marginalized groups that have been underpaid for many, many years. So if you think about women, for example, and we can go through the different buckets of women, but just women as a whole, 83 cents on the dollar. So look at it a little bit different way. A man works 365 days to make a salary. In order for a woman in that same role to make that same amount, she has to work through currently March 15th of the following year to make that same amount. It's terrible, and it's something we definitely have to fix. Pay transparency is helping, because now it's saying, okay, this is what the rate should be. And women or anyone in marginalized groups that are applying for those jobs know what they should be getting, instead of getting offered something low and just taking it because they want the job.
Marc, great stuff, man.
Yeah.
I appreciate you being here.
Thanks a lot, Rick. Appreciate you having me.
You're welcome, folks. That's Marc Mullis. He is the founder and CEO at Payformance Partners. We're going to take a quick break. We're going to have a 60-second pro tip coming up here from our friends over at Burr & Foreman. They are a premier law firm throughout the Southeast with many, many locations, but they have offices in South Carolina and Charleston and Greenville and Spartanburg and Hilton Head and, 5 or 6 other places. They got like 8 offices here. We got, let's see, who's coming up? Doug Lineberry. Doug is a partner over at Burr & Foreman, and he specializes in intellectual property law, and he is going to take 60 seconds and provide you a pro tip. We'll be right back.